As the saying goes, all roads lead to Rome, and it's very true. These are the roads that St. Peter and St. Paul walked as they came to the great city of Rome to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. They found an incredible city full of idols and pleasures of the Roman vice. And there, in that place of grandiose splendor, they proclaimed Jesus Christ crucified. Rome was founded in year 753 before Christ. It had very humble beginnings, but it grew to become the most important kingdom of ancient history. The Roman Empire was able to thrive despite its own emperors. For example, we have Caligula, who made his own horse a member of the Senate. We also have Nero, who burnt the city in order to make space for his great palace. The place that we know as the Vatican used to be a racetrack, a hippodrome, where they could provide bread and circus for the people. It is in that place that eventually St. Peter would die as a martyr. That place was called the Circus of Nero and Caligula. In the 70s, Vespasian rose to power. He hated Nero. Nero had been so selfish so as to build things for himself and then blame the Christians. Vespasian thought more about the Populus Romanus and wanted to provide for them bread and circus, and for that reason he demolished the Domus Aurea, the house of Nero, in order to build the great Colosseum that many visit to this day. He was not able to see that masterpiece finished. It was his son Titus, the one that saw it in its completion. The Colosseum provided entertainment for the Populus Romanus, but at the cost of the life of many, including many slaves, gladiators, and of course the Christians, who were killed publicly during the times of persecution. So this is the great city of Rome, and I was able to pay a visit. After living there for 3 years, of course I missed it. And so I would like to take you along with me and show you some of the beautiful places that I was able to see during my time there. We would like to begin, first of all, with Christ himself, because the city of Rome is so blessed to have several relics of Jesus himself. So we begin our journey here at the Church of Santa Croce in Jerusalem in Rome, the Church of the Holy Cross in Rome. And it is to this place that Helen, the mother of Constantine the Great, brought the relics of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ after finding them in Jerusalem. Thus the name. Inside the church, towards the left, there is a chapel, and in that chapel they keep the relics of the Holy Cross. It's pretty fascinating to be in that little room. The relics include the title at the top of the cross, saying that Jesus was the King of the Jews. They also have relics of some nails of the cross, spines from the crown of thorns, and also the cross itself. One may approach these relics perhaps with skepticism, yet in Rome you can find things from 3,000 years ago, so why not? Then we proceed to the great Basilica of St. John Lateran, because there they have another fascinating relic, and that relic is the one of the table of Christ of the Last Supper. That relic made it all the way to the Cathedral of the Pope and is kept towards the left from the main altar. There is an altar there, and way up there you can see behind the scene of the Last Supper a piece of wood that is believed to be part of the table of Christ when he celebrated the Last Supper with his disciples. As we continue our pilgrimage, of course, we have to stop at St. Peter's Basilica. Here is where the bones of St. Peter are kept below the main dome, below the main altar. Here is where St. Peter was able to profess his love for Christ, as he said to him 30 years earlier, "Lord, you know everything, you know that I love you." It is here that St. Peter was crucified upside down, as tradition holds, bearing fruit to his martyrdom, his love for Jesus Christ.
The Lord be with you. The reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus went into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter said in reply, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Simon Peter replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my heavenly Father. So I say to you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. The gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. One is always in wonder and awe in this humongous structure of St. Peter's Basilica, built in the 1500s into the 1600s. It took 26 popes to build this magnificent structure. There used to be a previous basilica here that stood for about 1,000 years, but it had to be demolished in order to build this new one. As you walk into St. Peter's Basilica, you see the statues of many saints that reminds us that we are on this journey of holiness towards the altar of Christ, the true and eternal Jerusalem. After visiting St. Peter's Basilica, I have to take you now to St. Paul outside the walls. This magnificent basilica is the third basilica built in this place. This area used to be the great cemetery on Via Ostiense, or the road that led to the city of Ostia from Rome. Here it was where St. Paul was buried, in a public cemetery, a pagan cemetery in fact, after being beheaded in the south of the city. Eventually the Christians built a humble small basilica, then a great one that was destroyed around the 1800s, and then the new basilica that is present today was rebuilt identically to the previous one. It is my favorite church in Rome, in fact. I absolutely love going there and pray before the chains of St. Paul and before the sarcophagus that contains the bones of the saint. So as you can see, I was blessed to be at St. Paul outside the walls during a concert. And this is the tombstone that covered the sarcophagus of St. Paul. There I love to read the letter to the Romans in Rome, right in front of the bones of the very one who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. So that was St. Paul outside the walls. But my time in Rome was very blessed also by visiting the northern part of Italy. I went about with my friend Father Andrea Barliero, who is a priest in the Diocese of Adria Rovigo, and he took me to the place where the bones of Saint Luke are kept, and also I visited the tomb of Saint Matthias, who was the one that replaced Judas after the betrayal. If we want to continue talking about the saints that were of the time of Christ, we also have to visit the tomb of St. Philip and James the Lesser. They are kept in the Church of the Dodici Apostoli, or the Church of the 12 Apostles in Rome. That place only is about 1 block from Casa Santa Maria, the place where the North American College for Priests is at. I was blessed to visit those saints as well. Our pilgrimage takes us now to the catacombs. Here we have the entrance of the catacombs of St. Calixtus. I had the opportunity to visit there and to celebrate Mass with Father Alberto Vargas, who is studying in Rome. We were together there. What an honor. Calixtus was ordained a deacon in year 199 by Pope Zephyrinus, and he was appointed the superintendent of the Christian cemetery at the Appian Way in Rome. That place is what is called now the Catacombs of St. Calixtus. It became a burial ground of many popes and was the first kind of property owned by the Church, even before the legalization of Christianity. By that time, Christians have gained most popularity because of their charity to strangers and because of their care for the burial of their dead. In the 3rd century, 9 bishops of Rome were interred in the catacombs of St. Calixtus. It is possible that Calixtus was martyred around year 222 or 223, perhaps during a popular uprising. The feast day of St. Calixtus is October 14. I should mention also Pope Sixtus II. Pope Sixtus II died on August 6 of 258 while he was celebrating Mass precisely at the catacombs of St. Calixtus in Rome, and he was killed there together with his deacons. In downtown Rome, at the Church of the 12 Apostles, where St. Philip and James are buried, they have tried to reproduce what the catacombs looked like in the time when they were in full use. And so here we have several reproductions of the frescoes and what the tombs used to be like. Definitely we can see the beauty of Christianity. Jesus represented as the Good Shepherd, the Blessed Mother with Jesus on her lap, and the great dignity with which Christians were interred in these places called dormitoria, or the place to sleep because they will be waiting to be awakened by Jesus on his second coming. The next stop in our pilgrimage is the famous Piazza Navona, a beautiful place right in the middle of Rome that has kept the same shape as the great stadium of Domitian. There is a church, the Church of St. Agnes, where the relics of the saint are kept. St. Agnes, Virgin and Martyr, is one of the 7 women who, along with the Blessed Virgin Mary, are commemorated by name in the canon of the Mass. Her feast day is January 21st. She is the patroness of virgins and patroness of chastity. We also see here several frescoes from the Crypta Balbi, where they reproduce the images of Jesus, Mary, and the early saints of Christianity, especially right before Christianity was legal in the empire. Here is a picture of St. John, who together with Paul were martyrs of the faith. It is important to notice that Christianity became legal precisely because of Constantine the Great, who in year 313, with the Edict of Milan, allowed Christianity to come from the underground, and then eventually in 324, by forbidding pagan sacrifices, Constantine legalized Christianity. It was perhaps Saint Helen the one who did more than any other female saint of the Church, aside from the Blessed Virgin Mary, because when she brought the relics of the true cross to Rome, and with the legalization of Christianity, Jesus finally was able to come from the ground. Christianity was able to be public, and therefore the Church received for first time their first cathedral, the public place of worship for the Pope of Rome. Perhaps one may be distracted so as to think that St. Peter's Basilica is the cathedral of the Pope, but that's not the case. St. John Lateran is the cathedral of the Pope. Built over the land of the Lateran family, this church was dedicated to St. John the Evangelist, and St. John the Baptist. Our pilgrimage now takes us to the Church of St. Monica. St. Monica was the mother of St. Augustine. She was born in year 331 AD in North Africa. When she was young, she married to a Roman pagan named Patricius. For years, Monica prayed for her husband and for her mother-in-law until finally she was able to convert them to Christianity. But she had a harder time trying to convince her young son, Augustine. When Augustine moved to Milan, St. Monica followed him, and she was able to convince the Bishop of Milan, St. Ambrose, to help her to convert her son. And in fact, this happened. St. Ambrose was able to baptize Augustine after 17 years of resistance to the faith. The baptistry where St. Augustine was baptized is still kept in Milan, right below the facade of the Duomo of Milan. It is the largest Gothic cathedral that has ever been built. It is beautiful, and I feel so blessed that I was able to visit it with Father Alberto Vargas during my visit to Rome. It was just a day trip, but it was well worth it. The construction of the Duomo of Milan officially started in year 1386 by Bishop Antonio da Saluzzo and was supported by the ruler of Milan, Gian Galeazzo Visconti, who had grand visions of that great cathedral. In my opinion, the most beautiful part of the cathedral is the outside, the roof. There are plenty of statues. Some people have counted up to 3,400 statues, 135 gargoyles that decorate this beautiful cathedral. The construction of this cathedral has not been finished to this day. It is beautifully decorated inside by great stained glass windows, and they flood this beautiful cathedral with wonderful light. The facade of the cathedral was not finished but until the time of Napoleon, and the construction still continues. A 5-year project to clean the building was started in 2002 with routine restorations, but it hasn't been concluded yet because this is 2018 and the project still is ongoing. To me, the Cathedral of Milan speaks of the heavenly Jerusalem, what we truly aspire as Christians, to rise up to heaven, to be there with our God forever, and to rise above our sinfulness. As I mentioned before, my time in Italy was blessed also by visiting Father Andrea Varliero, and he, being a priest from the north of Italy, was able to take me to many places, especially to the city of Padova. Here is a picture of a church that was in use since the 4th century. And when you go to Padova, you have to go to the Basilica of St. Anthony. It is beautiful. St. Anthony of Padua is the patron saint of the lost and stolen articles, and he was a powerful Franciscan preacher and teacher. Anthony was born in 1195, 13 years after Francis of Assisi, in Portugal, and his name of baptism was Fernando. At the age of 15, he entered the religious order of St. Augustine, but later on he received a call from the Lord to become a Franciscan instead, with a new name, Anthony. The Franciscans allowed Anthony to go to Morocco to be a witness for Christ, and perhaps even a martyr. But he became seriously ill, and after several months he realized that he had to come back home. St. Francis heard of Anthony's great gifts of preaching, so he assigned him to preaching northern Italy. The beautiful Basilica of St. Anthony shows many frescoes, and it really shows the beauty of the faith, not only of this one saint, but of the people of God. As Anthony became a preacher in northern Italy, he became very famous. Some say that even up to 30,000 people would gather around him to hear him speak. Nowadays, pilgrims come to his tomb and leave their prayers and intentions, pictures of the miracles that the saint had granted through his intercession. After Padua, my friend Father Andrea took me to a monastery that was built in the 1100s. It's a beautiful place. Enjoy. Also, Father Andrea brought me to his home parish, the parish where he is pastor, San Bartholomew. This parish was built in the late 1500s as part of the Counter-Reformation. It was a response to the Protestant Reformation. It's a beautiful church, and during this time there I discovered not only the beauty of the building, the magnificent art and the altar, but most especially the wonderful people that I got to meet. He took me to families, to places, to meetings. It was really a great time. San Bartholomew, pray for us. And then upon my return to Rome, I was able to visit several museums, and in them I saw plenty of medieval art. And whether they were made on stone or in mosaics or as frescoes, all of them show the beauty of the medieval period, a time that normally we call the Dark Ages, but they weren't so dark. There was plenty of light during this period of the history of the Church, the light of Christ that was shining for everyone to see. The transition from medieval times to what we call the Renaissance was not so easy, though. We had to overcome a very critical time of the history of the Church, which was the Protestant Reformation, and with its challenges, we also saw many saints. For example, here we have the tomb of St. Ignatius of Loyola, who is buried in the Church of the Gesù, and his altar is exactly the opposite side of the altar of St. Francis Xavier, who is also buried there. They both were best friends, so it is appropriate that they are buried on the same church. St. Ignatius of Loyola was born in 1491. He made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 1523. Eventually, he sought after the approval of the Society of Jesus, and this happened in 1540. He was the first superior of the order. Before Ignatius died in 1556, his order had already established 35 schools, and the order had about 1,000 members. St. Francis Xavier was born in 1503. When Pope Paul III asked the new order of the Jesuits to take the missions, they were not able to take the mission of the Holy Land due to warfare. Instead, they were given other kinds of missions. Ignatius of Loyola decided to send Francis Xavier to India, and so he left in 1541 on his 35th birthday. As he departed, he was also informed that he had become the papal nuncio to the East. Francis Xavier was able to build 40 churches for the people in India, but eventually he went to Japan and China, and finally he died in year 1552. Francis Xavier was beatified by Pope Paul V on October 25th of 1619, and canonized by Gregory XV on March 12th of 1622 at the same ceremony as Ignatius of Loyola. He is the patron saint of Catholic missions, and his feast day is December 3rd. The last pictures that you have seen belong to the Church of St. Ignatius in Rome, which used to be the Collegio Romano, or the place of formation for the Jesuits. Eventually, that place became the Gregorian University. It is that place where I studied biblical theology. At the Gregorian is where Father Alberto is studying canon law. Beautiful place with great history. There are plenty more things that I can tell you about my time in Rome, but you can only go to so many places. So these are the ones that I visited and I was so happy to see. I am always moved by the witness of the saints, by the blood of the martyrs, and by all the wonderful things that are happening today. I'm so happy that I got to see Father Alberto, that I was able to be at the general audience with Pope Francis. I am indeed moved by this great city full of history and full of love for Christ and of His Church. So, this is my visit to Rome. You know that my favorite place is St. Paul outside the walls. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. God bless you.